How to set a boundary. Oh, yeah, this one's tricky. I remember at my early stage of the journey, I was super confused on that one. I'm reading it everywhere and hearing it on podcasts, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, you're talking about this word, and I understand what it means, but I don't understand how to do it. So help me out. Okay, I'm going to get you straight on this one, because a lot of people don't actually understand what a boundary means or how to do it. So breaking it down, this is the simple definition of a boundary. In the future, if a specific situation happens, I'm going to take this other specific action. Example, if you hit me, so we're thinking about kids in the backseat of the car, but it could also be adults, unfortunately. If in the future we're in a situation where you strike me with your hand, I'm going to leave. I'm going to walk out that door and never come back. If in the future we're having a discussion and you begin raising your voice, I will gracefully exit that conversation and I will go to a safe, quiet place where there's nobody else, or maybe just not you, and I'm going to calm myself for the next 45 minutes. If we are in a car driving across the country and I'm a passenger and I witness a situation where I believe that you're driving recklessly, I will ask you to slow down. And then, if you don't, then I will exit the vehicle at the next stop and not get back in again. Right? So let's get more tricky, because I see this, I've heard this one a lot lately from women who are feeling emotional distress at who their partner is following on Instagram. And I might hear things like, it's like, well, I browse through his Instagram friends and I see that he's following all these bikini clad girls, and that just makes me really uncomfortable. So how do I set a boundary to get him to stop doing that? Okay, now we're in tricky territory, because that's not a boundary. If I am setting a boundary with the intent of getting the other person to change their behavior, that's not a boundary at all. That's manipulation. That is using the terminology and vocabulary of psychology and self-help and whatever else to try to kind of bully this other person into changing their behavior so that it is more in line with something that my nervous system is going to feel safe with. Well, yeah, we want to feel safe. Okay, I get that. And it is important. Sure. I'm not saying don't feel safe. And I'm not saying put up with stuff where you feel unsafe. That's not it. I'm saying that's not a boundary. That is a request for behavior change. And when you really look at it and you get real about it, you realize that's not a request, that's a demand. This is a demand for you to change your behavior. That behavior I'm seeing is not acceptable to me, and you need to change it in order for you to be acceptable to me. Okay, some people might start getting confused here. Well, what's the difference? I'm like, there's a huge difference. Because if you think about it in this hard, fast, set in stone rule, boundaries are never about the other person. Ever. A boundary is about me and the action that I'm going to take in a given situation. Because you think about it, a boundary doesn't even need another person to be there. I can say to myself, hey self, in the future, if it's 6 a.m. and my alarm goes off, I'm going to wake up and go to the gym. And I'm setting that as a boundary with myself. Or I set a boundary with the universe and say, okay, if I travel to this destination and I have an experience like this, I meet a healer, or I find the waterfall of my dreams, or I get an awesome sunset on the beach, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find a nice glass of red wine and I'm going to enjoy it. Right? This is the format of a boundary, is that in the future, if a specific situation is met, I'm going to take a specific action. And the reason this is important is because it keeps power and agency in our court. I retain power and agency over my life, my choices, where I go, where I spend my energy, who I spend my time with. That is still within my realm of control or influence, or however you want to say that. But when we make it about the other person and we say, you need to do more of this or less of that in order for this to be okay, a whole bunch of things are wrong with that, or problematic. Not wrong, but just problematic. We'll just say that path will lead to toxification of the relationship pretty consistently, maybe even 100%. So let's use a example that I've heard often. People say, a boundary is like a wall or a line in the sand. And we put up these boundaries against the intruders. And so I'm going to build this wall here. So just build this psychic wall in your brain and don't let them cross it. And that's your boundary. This is my space and that's your space, and you don't get to come into my space. And so let's go back to the example of the children sitting in the back seat while we're doing a road trip to Disneyland, right? And they're hitting each other. This was me as a kid. So one of them says, this is my wall. You don't get across this wall. I'm not going to allow you. That's my boundary. You need to stop hitting me. That's my boundary. Okay, what happens when the other person just refuses to honor that? What happens when that person just doesn't listen or doesn't care or is so lost in their own emotional dysregulation that they don't even have capacity to consider another human being in that moment? That's pretty common. What do we do? See, that's where that wall idea kind of begins breaking down. So we can have all these ideas about I'm going to set a psychic boundary, I'm going to set a physical boundary, whatever, right? But all these things are kind of predicated on this idea that I'm putting this wall out there, this boundary out there, and you're not allowed to, or you must, blah, 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 blah. What happens if they don't? And that's where it falls apart. And I see this all the time in working with couples, or maybe just one half of a relationship that's falling apart. I see this all the time. And they say, I set a boundary on that and he's still doing it. That's a dead giveaway that there wasn't a boundary. That was a demand for change, maybe a request if you said it really nicely. True boundaries don't work like that. Once you embrace this model of boundaries, we don't have, that doesn't even come up. It's what was my boundary in that situation? If he kept following the bikini-clad girls on Instagram, I am going to leave. I'm going to gracefully exit this relationship because that creates such a consistent state of unsafety in my nervous system that I cannot relax, and trust is being eroded and resentment is rising. And we know that all leads to toxification of the relationship, and that's on me. Boundaries are never about the other person, ever. It's about me, the action that I'm going to take in the future if a given situation is met. And I maintain agency and control and choice and power in my life. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful and it feels amazing. Way, way, way better than the alternative, which is I need my partner to change in order for me to be regulated or to feel good or whatever. And then I can already imagine people saying, oh, but Kirby, he does this thing and he does that thing, and it's like, oh, she's cheating on me, or he's flirting with girls at work, or, the parents are like, but my kid, it keeps hitting the other one in the back seat. What do I do? And it's like, you get really, really clear on it. What is the exact trigger? What is the exact situation where you want to establish the boundary? Okay. One child is hitting the next one. That is not something that I find acceptable. And when that happens in the future, if we're in a situation where one of you is hitting the other, I'm going to take this action. What is the action? I will physically remove you from each other, or I will have some other consequence or punishment or whatever. Like, that's going to be on you and for you to decide. Now, with children, depending upon the age range, it gets a little bit more tricky because the developmental state of their brain doesn't actually have, say, it's got capacity kind of for forward thinking, but it's really weak at that point or underdeveloped. And so with a child at that age, developmental stage, you might need to be like, basically restate the boundary often. Repetition. We'll just say that. Like repetition with clarity. And this is going to lead us to boundary number 2, or the second aspect of a boundary that many, many people miss. If I communicate to another human being in the future, if this situation happens, I'm going to take that action, then we could get the hard part. In the future, when that situation actually does happen, I need to do the thing that I said I was going to do. I don't flex. I don't kick it down the road. I don't give him a pass. I don't like, oh, well, he's having a rough day, so I'm going to, let it slide this time. No. When that happens, we communicate to that person that all this energy I put into stating a boundary and where my lines are and all that's worthless, because when the moment actually comes, I don't have the courage or the strength or the discipline to follow through on it. And I just taught that person, oh, he makes empty threats, or he makes, it goes into all this blah, blah, blah about boundaries, and then nothing actually happens on it. That was literally my mother. And it creates total chaos in that relational dynamic, because every aspect of it becomes less and less trustworthy. Because you're like, oh, you're going through all this drama to like say this thing, but it's like, 10 minutes from now, you're going to change your mind. 10 minutes from now, you're going to not have the wherewithal to follow through on this commitment. And then, yeah, that does not bode well for either person, really. But arguably, what's even more important than that is that I communicate to myself, my inner child or subconscious. Well, we communicate to parts of my brain that are watching that I'm not going to follow through on that commitment. I'm not going to follow through on that boundary. I'm not going to do the thing that I said I'm going to do. And in that moment, what we're doing, the message that's received by that inner child or subconscious is something else is more important than you. And this is another thing I see so often working with couples and individuals, is that they, I help them get clear on what the boundaries are and what the limits are and all that kind of stuff. And we get to the point where they can actually state it clearly. And then the moment comes where they need to follow through and they don't. I'm like, your inner child, you literally just told your inner child, your needs don't matter. You are not as important to me as he is, or she is, or they are. You are not the most important thing in my life. I'm not even sure if you're second most important thing in my life. But I do know that in the moment when we're literally in the heat of whatever this conflict is, and I've already done all the homework ahead of time to figure out what my boundary was and what my limits are and what the action was that I'm going to take, and in the heat of the moment, I just abandon all that. Sorry, little child inside, you're not important. Most of us don't even get that far. We just ignore it. We just like move on. It'll be fine. Yeah. And then we wonder why we're lonely and have emotional outbursts and high volatility and anxiousness or avoidance or whatever. Like all these things emanate from a underdeveloped relationship with the inner child, the subconscious or interoception. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you're starting to get it. The boundaries are not about that other person. Boundaries are about me. Boundaries are about my agency in situations that don't align with me, what I'm actually going to do. So if this is new to you and you want to practice, I highly recommend practicing. Get out a piece of paper. Start writing things down. What are situations that you don't want to be present in? Start simple. I'm on the beach. I'm up to my knees in the water, and someone screams shark attack. That is a situation in the future, a specific situation in the future. What action am I going to take? Oh, I'm going to run out of the water. Easy. That's a boundary with myself. There's not even another person there. It's kind of me and the universe. Great. Okay, let's find another one. I'm coming home from work. There we go. I'm coming home from work and it's been a long day and I'm stressed. And someone starts tailgating me. And there's aggressive driver honking their horn, getting really close, whatever. Sorry for people who are not Americans. I'm not sure what you call tailgating in other countries, but like when the other car gets like way, way too close. That's a situation in the future. What action are you going to take? Okay, so just start there. Start with the situations where you're just like, in the future, in this specific situation, I'm going to take that action. And then when it happens, take the damn action. Okay, now let's get to relationships. Let's say you're in a partnership and you say, okay, in the future, if I step into the shower, say we're living with someone, it's like a wife or a living girlfriend or something, in the future, and I step into the shower and I see that there's no soap left, future, specific situation, what's the action I'm going to take? Okay. Now that one could be like, I'm responsible for the soap, so I'm still not interacting with a partner. But let's say it's something like, in the future, we've agreed that you're going to take out the garbage. And then, your partner. Let's say you and your partner have an agreement that your partner's going to take out the garbage. In the future, they don't take out the garbage that day. What do you do? What is the specific action you will take? Think about that. Let it sink in. Let it digest a bit. And then communicate it. Boundaries don't really work unless they're communicated. I mean, they do because it's not about the other person, but like for a harmony in the relationship, it's always a good idea to communicate them. So we say to partner and say, hey, partner, in the future, so in the present, we've agreed that you're going to take out the garbage. And so in the future, if you do not take out the garbage, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to remind you gently. And then in the future, after that, if you still don't take out the garbage, I'm going to remind you with a little bit more pointedness. That's what I'm going to do. Or let's say we don't want to do that. In the future, if you don't take out the garbage on a time that we've agreed that you will, I'm going to make a big Post-it note and I'm going to stick it on the refrigerator and I'm going to like take the top piece of garbage off the garbage and I'm going to tape it onto the Post-it note in the garbage can and say, please remove me. That's what I'm going to do. Right? I'm being silly here, but you get the idea. You've developed a plan of action for a specific circumstance, and then you've communicated that plan of action to your partner so that they know what to expect. And then when that happens, they're going to be like, how dare you do that? Why do you do blah, 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 blah? And you just say, I'm sorry if that's uncomfortable, but I've communicated this boundary in the past clearly, more than once, hopefully. And now you can say, that's my boundary. I've communicated it. I've checked to make sure that you understand it, and I followed through on it. We can't do any better than that. And just because they're uncomfortable does not mean that's a justification or excuse for us to violate that boundary and let it go. No, we communicated it partly for ourselves, our relationship with self. So sure, they might be having a bad day, but I need to work with myself and say, okay, my partner's having a bad day. Do I really need to follow through on that? Look inward. Is it really that important today? Be like, I have this commitment to myself, and now I want to be compassionate also. That's a tricky situation, and only you can decide that. And both answers are valid. There's no wrong answer there. So that's my take on boundaries. I hope you find it helpful. It's definitely changed my life in major ways that are all positive. And it is simply, I am with a person that I don't align with, and I just say, hey, that doesn't align with me. And sometimes I'll explain to them why. Sometimes I'll help them understand why I'm going to take the action I'm going to take, or why the boundary is where it is. None of that's necessary. There's no rule that says we need to justify our boundaries or explain them to another person. A lot of people get stuck on that one. We do not need to justify or explain ourselves. We can simply say, this is my boundary. This is the action I'm going to take. That's who I am. And if that doesn't feel good for you, I'm sorry. Maybe we're not actually in alignment. Like, if this is my truest expression of self, and I feel really good about it, and you feel really not good about it, we may not be in alignment, and we may need to take actions about how much proximity we have to each other, how close we really want to be, and that's a whole other discussion. So I hope you get that. So I wish you all the best. Good luck out there. Boundaries are hard to pick up the concept, but once you get it, it's beautiful. So wish you the best. Peace.